And we're back with another episode of Superkaz Reviews. This time, I was about to say this week, but it is not a weekly deal. This time, we're going to be listening to Elgar's Enigma Variations. All 14 movements, plus the theme. We're going to be ranking all of them on the tier list today. We're going to start with the theme. And the version, by the way, the version I was listening to for all of these was performed by the Lehigh University Philharmonic Orchestra. I'm sure everyone has their own favorite that they like to listen to. That's just the one that I chose to partake in this time around. So the theme, Enigma, I'd put it in C tier, I think, is what I'm going to do. It's a little slow, but it's got a really catchy chorus that obviously, it does its good job of being mysterious. And it begs the question, is Elgar the mystery? I think that's for us to interpret. Next up, we got the first variation it's dedicated to Elgar's wife, Caroline Alice Elgar. His wifey is, looking at a picture of her. Not my personal cup of tea. But, different strokes for different blokes. As Elgar, I'm sure, said, it's a much catchier and more developed version of the original theme. It's pleasant enough to listen to. It's more full sound. I would call it B tier. It's good. Not extraordinary, but it's above average as far as, classical music goes. It's more remarkable than the average. Leading into variation 2 for Hugh David Stewart Powell. It's a mouthful of a name right there. Saying his name is probably as long as the variation took. Elgar tried emulating Hugh's trademark piano runs with the strings frantic quavering, like cicadas in the night or in the evening. It's fun, but it's over as soon as I blinked. It's probably done playing right now. I'd call that probably B tier. I really wish it just lasted longer. All right, variation 3. Richard Baxter Townsend. It sounds a lot like something I would hear out of a Winnie the Pooh cartoon. And almost gets somewhere with the main theme, but then just goes somewhere else a lot less interesting. And it never really develops more on the original theme. So I actively don't like listening to this one. I'm going to call it D tier myself. If you're angry, if you guys are Richard Baxter Townsend stans, come at me in the comments, please. All right, into variation 4, William Meath Baker. This is where we start kind of getting filling out the family tree of Elgar's variations, because this is the stepbrother of Richard, who was, in question of variation 3. And he's the uncle of Dora Penny, who is the subject of variation 10. As well as I'm sure he's, friends with a bunch of these other peoples. It's a great one. It suffers again from it starts really strong and then it's basically over, and I just wish there was more to it. I've probably sat here talking about William Meath Baker and his variation longer than the piece actually plays for. So you guys are probably listening to literal radio static right now while I play Kirby Air Riders over in the background. That being said, it's such a good, it has some really good riffs in there, and I'm going to call it an A tier, despite its length. But then that gets into variation 5, Richard Penrose Arnold. This guy is like a philosopher. Elgar noted Richard's troubled existentialist nature. He tries to fill that out in the piece because he felt it came through a lot during his amateur piano playing, and I feel like I relate a lot about this character, where his defense mechanism to break up serious conversation comes through with his witty remarks and his joke telling and stuff. And I identify with him because I also suck at playing the piano. Richard Penrose Arnold, though, gets an S tier, both, as a guy and also as it's just a fantastic piece. It's so deep, and it really does a great job of developing itself and differentiating itself too from all the others. All right, getting into variation 6, Isabel Fitton, one of Elgar's viola pupils. I guess her nickname was Isobel with a Y. It's pretty interesting. He included one of her string warm-ups as a repeating phrase through the movement, which I find kind of demeaning in myself. And I also find it it's one note and pretty uninteresting. But it might be because I'm not even close to being a string player. I neither respect the craft nor do I like it. Outside of double bass, if anyone's selling a double bass, I will take it, and I would love to learn how to play that one. Elgar is kind of a dog, though, because in all his statements, he described their relationship, or he described the movement. Sorry, not the relationship. To be clear, he described the progression of this variation as being, for a moment, romantic. Which, dude, you have a wife. Isobel gets a C. I think it's pretty average, pretty mid. Variation 7. I think these next 3 all kind of flow into each other. This one's really fun and really bouncy. It's a rare instance of a classical piece being written for 1/1 time signature, and it kind of feels, I'm bouncing on my futon just thinking about it. It's meant to emulate his enthusiastic incompetence on the piano. So yet again, Elgar has a knack for string players and amateur pianists. This whole movement, though, for Troit Griffith, I forgot to mention that's his name. Troit and Elgar were caught in a thunderstorm, and they sought refuge in the house of their acquaintance, Winifred Norbury, who, speaking of, Winifred Norbury, subject of variation 8. Again, we get some undertones that Elgar may have had some charge, he might be a charged man. Said he spent a lot of time at Winifred's house, frequent hangout of both Elgar and, I'm sure, Troit Griffith. She must have had a nice house. I don't know if it's as nice as Sabrina Carpenter's house. We need a tour to get to the bottom of that. These last 2, though, they're both really good. Both pretty developed, and they stand out from each other, even though they flow one into the next, because of the the story that's being told, running to the house and everything in the thunderstorm. I'd say variation 7, I would give an A, and then variation 8, I like how elegant it is. I would give it a B. All right, here we go. Variation 9, August Jaeger, aka Nimrod. It's named this because Nimrod is a biblical hunter in the Old Testament, and Jaeger's last name means hunter, I guess, in some far-off language, in some other tongue. I'm going to be so real. I really don't like this piece. Call me just a contrarian. It's so overdone. It's so mid. It's going in C. I have more to say about it, though. Technically, it's reported that the variation came to Elgar after he explained to Jaeger he had writer's block, and then Jaeger pretty much said, get over it. Beethoven had this too. He's also technically deaf, whatever. Elgar wasn't deaf, though, mind you. So Elgar took Jaeger's advice and completely ripped off one of Beethoven's piano sonatas to come up with the main theme of Nimrod. And I like the explanation for the piece where Elgar also occasionally would say that, his publisher, August Jaeger, had a great soul. And that's something I would say about someone who I consider a Nimrod, who I have no other words to say about that person other than, oh yeah, it's a really great guy, So I give that a C. I think it's a C. I think it's a very mid piece. And then it goes into variation 10 for Dora Penny, aka Dora Bella. Once again, returning to above. She is the niece of one of the other guys. I don't remember. Elgar holds no punctures. He affectionately modeled the phrasing of this movement around Dorabella's characteristic stuttering, which you couldn't do that today. I think it's funny and fun. I do think it's standout one. I would consider it A tier. Yeah, I'm sticking with that. Variation 11. This one's my personal favorite. George Robertson Sinclair is the subject of this one, but I'm going to paint you a picture instead. You're on all fours. You struggle to breathe. Your nose is a little pressed in. You've been let out of the house. Finally, a taste of freedom. You can smell everything in the wild grass. And you run towards the tree line, only to find that your legs no longer have ground beneath them, and you are instead falling towards a pit of water, moving, rushing water. You paddle as fast as you can after you right yourself in the moving current. And you're finally able to find a sandbar and climb ashore. This is the subject of Elgar's Variation 11. It is actually modeled after Sinclair's dog, Dan. He's a bulldog. I think this is the best part of the Enigma variations. I look forward to it every time. It's S tier. It's great. And the fact that it's not even about the guy it's about is stellar. You can't make this stuff up. Variation 12 for Basil George Nevinson. We got another amateur musician here. Basil's amateur cello skills were displayed front and center. The opening and closing cello solos, I think they're all right. You know, if it's not an amateur cellist who's playing them, I suppose. And this one, honestly, like it does everything Nimrod does, just better. So I'd call it a B. You know, one step above Nimrod. He's got the edge. Variation 13. This one's a little contested because it's not sure. It's not, 100% confirmed. The person, when this came out, when this debuted in the theaters or opera houses, whatever you want to, concert halls, I guess. That's actually where these things are played. It wasn't named who this variation was about. And that's because he gave the explanation. It was about someone who was out at sea at the time. And, back in the 1800s, there's a lot of superstition about, people out at sea not wanting to mention their name a whole lot. The clarinet plays a phrase from Mendelssohn's Calm Sea and Prospered Voyage over the rolling drums. He meant to emulate the sound of an ocean liner's engine. I think this is a really cool effect. I think he actually kind of nails it, where it reminds me of like Wind Waker almost. Or maybe like an ambience from Breath of the Wild. You're out in a body of water, and you hear nothing but the seagulls and the wind through the trees. It's not the most impressive or full sounding, but I think it's a very creative spin on the original theme. And I would consider it A tier. It eventually was discovered that it was about Lady Mary Lygon, she was the one out at sea, and she received a letter from Elgar, I guess, letting her know that, she's been essentially co-opted and immortalized in this piece as just being someone who was on an ocean liner one time. And then we get to Variation 14, the conclusion of Elgar's Enigma variations. This one's titled EDU, and that's because that is Wifey's name for Elgar. He self-proclaimed this variation as being bold and vigorous in general style. And I concur, it's fairly bold and fairly vigorous. Conclusion to the collection of pieces. If it wasn't for the middle section, though, I would say that it kind of falls flat on its face. That middle section is really good. The rest of it's essentially just kind of Nimrod again. I'll give it B tier though, because that kind of elevates it. So there we have it. That is the official ranking of all Elgar's Enigma variations. You can't dispute it, and if you try to, you'll have to go to the comments section, because I'm not taking live feedback here. That would take some sort of like quantum computing. So thank you guys for listening, and feel free to check out these variations for yourself and let me know what you think. All right, I will catch you guys later. Bye.